Thanks, guys, for coming out tonight. Tonight we'll be continuing our coverage of the Semi-Slav. So this will be the complete Semi-Slav Part 3. I think, were you guys here for the other ones? Were you here for?
I haven't missed one of them. I love the Semi-Slav.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we got some people that have seen it, some new faces, but no worries. You can always jump in on these series anytime. And tonight, I thought, you know, as a little reward here, maybe we'll mostly focus on some games. I got 3 games to show. Maybe we'll get through them all tonight, maybe we won't, but the whole point of this series is we're not going to rush. So we're going to go over 3 different games in the Reynolds Attack, also known as the Reynolds Variation, but you know, attack sounds better. So this is something that white can initiate, and we're going to go ahead and have a look. So we're going to go over to the board now. And this first game that we're going to look at tonight is Anatoly Karpov versus Viswanathan Anand. And this was played in the World Championship 1998. A knockout. Are you like upset?
B.A. championship.
Yeah, so yeah, Ben Simon has some serious opinions about these knockout tournaments. But you'll have to ask him another time. So we're going to get to this game. And so one more time, we're going through the Semi-Slav tonight. This has always been Karpov's preferred move order, but he's going to arrive at the position we've been looking at. And so here we have it. We have a Meran. And black gets to take and play an early b5. We've covered some different bishop retreats, but we're going to look at the main line tonight. Also, we've talked about a6 here, but we're going to talk about the move bishop to b7. And last week, we talked about the moves e4 and a3 in this position. But tonight, our main focus is going to be on the main line. So when you play the Meran, this is what you're going to face more often than not. White castles, which, okay, obviously a very sensible move. And it follows sort of the basic rule that we've been following. When black decides to play bishop b7, you should castle. If he had started with the move a6, then usually e4 is the right move to play. So this is where we are. And now black plays a6. His next move is c5. This is the typical way of playing. When they play a6, you play e4. And black plays c5. So we'll pause here for just a second. So far, black has done pretty well. He's got reasonable squares for his pieces. He just needs to get his bishop out and he can castle. He has, some attack on the center, so white has to be a little cautious. But the big plus for white in this position is his lead in development. So it's up to white now to try to initiate some action in the center. And there's a couple different ways to do it. So I guess we got a couple more people here, so I'm gonna ask the class what you guys would do here as white in just a second. How would you take advantage of the fact that you're castled and you got your pieces out to decent squares? What would you guys play here as white? I'm just curious. Yeah, likable Dennis?
Yeah, maybe d5.
Yeah, d5. This is indeed the main move. And this is the Reynolds Attack. And this is what we're going to be focusing on for much of our lecture. I do want to point out this move e5, which I think is kind of tempting because you're attacking the knight. And really the only reason I'm going to show it is because I played a blitz game last night. That was my prep. So instead of actually looking at this game, I played some blitz and I got this position. And I had black, and my opponent did not play very well. So if you're black in this position, obviously knight to d5 looks like a pretty tempting move. But a bit more critical is taking on d4, so immediately breaking down the center. And here my opponent didn't find basically the only move in this position. What you sort of have to play in this position, believe it or not, is knight takes b5. So if he had played this, then it probably would have led to an equal position, because here you can take, and that gives you time to move your knight out of the way. You're going to take on e5. So after his knight moves, you take on e5, and wherever his queen goes, you can get a position like this that is clearly at least equal. So this is no problem at all for black. So if that's the best you can do after this, then probably d5, and the Reynolds Attack was a better way to play. My opponent, however, played a very bad move. He took on f6. Looks reasonable enough, and often that's how you play these types of positions, but not here. I took on c3, And probably he should just take back on c3 or play queen to e2. But, you know, he wanted to continue his blunderous path. Yeah, so now, like, I knew I was better, but I think the computer gave like monster numbers here already. He went here, super blunder. Lets me play a nice pretty move though. Now I can take on b2. He took here, which is quadruple blunder, and I took here. And so this happened, that also was a mistake. That was a mistake. And then obviously bishop takes f3, very good move. Kind of proud of the move I played though. Knight to e5, and here he resigned because he's in a lot of trouble. So that should give you some ideas of how quickly things can actually go wrong for white and how fast black's initiative can he can get really active too. He gets active pieces as well as white. Okay, so going back to this position here, our focus today is going to be on the main line, which is the move d5. Now, one thing you might have noticed is black can win a pawn. However, this would be very dangerous. You know, it's not time to open up the e-file because your king's stuck in the center. But if we went here, let's just have a little fun. Let's say he goes here. We should probably be kind of worried. But let's be extra greedy just for fun. I let my computer actually think here forever, so a4, which is not the most popular move, might actually be one of the best moves here. But even the simple idea of taking here, and now you can attack this piece by grabbing this guy. So in a position like this, things are looking pretty good for white. For example, if you develop casually, I can play bishop f4. The idea is if you castle, queen b7, and it's not going to be very easy to defend your pawn. And if you push it, then you're not going to be able to defend this thing. So it's obviously not advised that you open the center in this position. You got to get your stuff out and castle. And the main move was played in this game. So this is Anand with black here. Queen to c7. Excuse me. And it's kind of important for black in these lines to control the e5 square. So this is a very sensible square for the queen. And black, over the next moves, he's going to... Okay, so one thing is white is going to take here on e6 and create an isolated pawn that he might be able to attack in the future. So black's plan involves playing the move c4. And after this bishop moves away, now you have a square for your knight, sometimes your bishop, but mostly your knight that would be able to protect the e6 pawn if necessary. So that's a very common theme. In the game, he took right away. Sometimes they wait, but in the game, he took right away. And he went to c2, knowing that black is going to play c4, so a bit of prophylaxis. c4 anyway. And here, this is the main position that we're going to focus on. Here, there's actually 3 moves that I want to look at. So we're going to look at 3 different games with the 3 different moves. The big theme early on is attacking this weak e-pawn. So the most popular move is knight to g5, knight to d4, also very popular. And also what was played in the game, which is actually a rather dangerous system if you don't know what you're doing here. Queen to e2. And you're just getting ready, you're trying to control e5, so maybe I'm ready to push e5. And on my next move, I might move my knight and try to attack the e6 pawn. So black played bishop to d6. Again, we're still fighting for e5. And so again, there's 2 moves. In all these positions, usually this knight can go one of 2 different ways. In the game, he went to the center, knight to d4. Knight to g5 is not very scary. In this position, whenever they attack our pawn, usually knight to c5 is the move we're going to see a lot tonight. And if f4, we can play h6. And okay, there's more than one line here, but just to give you guys sort of an idea, knight to d3. And this is a very typical sacrifice in this line. So this is kind of a move that you should be aware of in all of these lines. Very often, black sacrifices his knight, so, or he's going to sack a pawn, and white's going to be able to win a pawn here. But you do get control of the light squares, and this is just a typical sacrifice that usually gives you enough compensation because your pieces are very active. You just need to castle, put a rook on the d file, and black's doing okay, so this should be quite all right for him. For example, after castling, let's see, actually I think this is a game. I do want to show this one game too that it's a pretty short game. Bareyev, Shirov, Hastings, 1991. They reached this position. So notice that if you, after castling, e5 right away is not a threat because we can check and then move our knight away. But after king h1, now he is threatening that. Okay. And now a very strange decision. Probably he should play queen e2 because there's a rook on the same file as his queen. But he played knight to d4. And I'm not sure how he had anticipated escaping this self-pin. He pinned himself. Because now black already has a very close to winning position already. Just this pin is so annoying. And so that's indeed, this already led to a great position for black here. He went after the dark squared bishop. And this is actually one of the most important bishops for white. So if you can get the dark squared bishop and this guy is unimposed, that generally works out really well in black's favor. Okay, so he went back and he got to swap off the bishop. And now he takes. Now after this knight is still in a pin, he attacks it again. We can keep attacking it. And okay, and here he took. You can also take with the bishop, which might actually be a little bit stronger. Stop it. Okay, and in this position, he achieved sort of a technical winning position here. So if you're 2700, you should be able to win all these positions like this. It's an openings class, so I just wanted to show the opening, but we'll do that. Because if we show the whole game, then Ben Simon is morally obliged to put it in the comments below. But okay, so that was an interesting game, and just an idea of just how fast things can blow up in white's face. Okay. So instead, in this game, knight to d4. Attacking the pawn on e6, so black will defend. And now f4. White has a majority over on the king side, so that's where he's going to be pushing his pawns more often than not. Black has a majority over here, so often too in the endgame, maybe if I can start playing b4 and I can get my own pawns rolling, I have the potential to make a passer. But my priority as black is to castle and be safe. But for the moment, you've threatened e5, so I can't let you play e5. So black plays e5. There's actually two very tempting moves here. I think knight f5, right? Just jump to a very active square. I think that's very tempting. And what about this move? The sacrifice. Well, in the game, he went in for the sacrifice. So we're going to come back and we're going to look at this. Which is Karpov, so maybe you didn't guess that he would sacrifice. But this was the first time this was played, so he actually had done some prep, and obviously it's World Championship, so he was a little bit prepared. If instead, knight to f5, it's not a big deal. We can castle. And if here, does anybody know what the move is here for black? It's an idea we touched on just briefly. Which one? Rook a d8. Yeah, you could do this. I'm tempted now just to take. And I assume you're going to take back. And I'm going to take here. Yeah, this is a bit of a problem. Yeah. So you do have to be careful. There's actually, and in these lines, they are super sharp. They get really sharp very quickly. So you do have to be very, very careful because there's a lot going on here in the center. And so again, it's a typical motif in this line. The correct move is knight to d3 again. So this is sort of the common idea of sacking a pawn. And okay, you get a position like this that is, I mean, roughly equal. You are down a pawn, but you, again, have very active pieces, an unopposed light-squared bishop that looks pretty strong. So this is something that could occur. So that knight d3, that's the move to keep in mind in a lot of these lines. However, we're going to take the more adventurous path. And people have sort of different views on this move we're going to look at. Knight d takes b5. Probably it's all been worked out to a draw. But as you can imagine, this is very dangerous for black. You better know what you're doing. Because I'm sacrificing, and your king is still in the center. And white over the next few moves is going to have to keep the initiative going. Because if we can just castle and be safe, well then, we're going to be looking pretty good. And also we're going to understand why the move queen e2 was played. Because now sometimes I take your c-pawn and get 3 pawns for the piece, which is going to end up happening in this line. OK, and now after a relatively forcing sequence here, OK, obviously we take this one. Dark squared bishop is a very good piece, so we'll grab that guy. Check. And how would you guys play white here? Again, we got to keep the initiative. Every move has to kind of have a threat. Likable Dennis?
I'm not 100% confident about it, but maybe rook d1.
Rook d1. OK, this is a forceful move, right? You're attacking the queen. I think your rook actually belonged here on the f-file, though, because you were ready to open the f-file. So now I'll just move out of the way. And now, if you take here, it doesn't come with a tempo on my queen, so I can have time to do whatever I want to do.
So perhaps, instead of rook d1,
yeah.
Just take on c4 with a queen.
Take on c4. So this is actually a problem. You've
White.
Yeah, you've let a little tactic happen to you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you lined up your stuff. And it's true that you do have this check here. Yeah, and then I can go here though, and we can do this. But it looks like I'm going to win some stuff. Yeah, so you can't actually take right away. That's the problem in this position. So the move is to take on e5. And after you take back, again, forcing moves.
Either bishop f4 or rook f5.
Yeah, it's either bishop f4 or rook to f5. Rook f5 was played, so I guess if here, well, this is probably all right. But again, if I get to like castle next move, then I'm doing fine. I'm not really sure what your next, if you have a lot more force.
Nope. I was making the forcing move that, but yeah, the rook move makes sense.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the rook move does make sense. And now you have to move your queen, protect your knight. And now he grabbed this. So 3 pawns for the piece. And the black king is still in the center. Now, I assume objectively this position is equal because every chess position is equal. Chess is a draw, and this shouldn't be any exception here. Though it is a bit scary as black. I think if you face this in a real game, you realize you have to be rather exact. But Anand was up to the task for a while. Rook to c8, very good move. Protects the knight, and there might be some stuff going on the c file. Check. And he went with that knight back. So he's hoping to trade the bishops. So a very interesting decision. And that's indeed what happened here. So far, so good. Now bishop g5. And notice you're not able to castle here because of queen b3. Check. So black still can't castle. Black, he does have his own activity, but it's kind of double-edged, which is what you can expect with this variation. So instead, queen d6, check, and here comes the mistake, if I'm not mistaken. He played king f7. What he should have done was queen b8 and trade the queens. And it's still 3 pawns for the piece, but in general this should favor the side with the pieces. If you're not getting checkmated, the queens are off the board. It should be a little bit better for the guy with the pieces. But he played king f7, a very tricky move, offering the rook in the corner. And black is saying, I have a bit of an attack too. So he went for this. And does black really have enough? Is your attack strong enough? Obviously, this rook is awesome. I can get my queen into the action. I have this check available. Sometimes this knight will be able to come into the game some way. Are you a little bit out of place over there? Well, he began with a check. And he took on e4. Threatening mate on g2 and the rook on f5. So he saved his rook and blocked the g-pawn. Rook to f3. And perhaps this is the move that black had been counting on. Rook takes g2. What's this all about? Well, now you've walked into this pin. Knight to e5. And perhaps here, he had only considered the move rook a to f1. Seems like that might be something the white would play. But this actually leads to a perpetual, believe it or not. We can take, and when you take back, there's quite a lot of ways to achieve the perpetual. But for example, we could do this a lot. We could do that a lot. And there's other lines, but it should lead to a draw. But here white had a surprise, a very shocking move. So I'll leave it to you guys. You can pause at home if you want a little more time. What did Karpov come up with here?
I believe, the takes on f6 or on g6. Queen takes g7.
Queen takes g7. Wow. Queen takes g7. Is that it? Yes, it is. And showering exclams everywhere. So he takes, and now we get to trade off lots of stuff. And now he takes here. And again, we reach a rather technical position. This is the kind of position Karpov's really good at. Now this game is 108 moves, and we're only on move 33. So we're going to just say that this is enough. This is a winning position, and we're going to go on to the next game here. But we'll admire the technique. And this is what we're going to see a lot of today. These games where it gets very tactical very quickly, and then it leads to a technically winning position, which is also why I said in the intro to this series, it has everything that's good about chess. It requires lots of opening knowledge, and it requires lots of tactical ability as well as strategic understanding and the ability to win positions like this. So it's really good for training your chess in all sorts of different areas that you might need to improve, which is why I really like the Semi-Slav. It's everything that's good about chess all in one opening. All right, and now he's pushing these guys. He has to make sure his king stays safe. Lots of checks. All right, now he's getting close here. All right, and so here's where the game ended, because now black's getting mated. All right, so a very strong example here of just how powerful that sacrifice really was on b5. So you do have to be worried. And okay, if black had just traded off the queens and just played the pieces against the 3 pawns, then the game might have had a completely different outcome. But it was a very well played game for white, which is why I thought it was only fair we'll show one game from white's perspective. So our next game of the day, this is the game between Rustam Kasimdzhanov versus Garry Kasparov. It was played in Linares, 2005. Okay. And Garry played the Semi-Slav a few times in his life, so he'll be a good example for us. Again, we're looking at castling today. All right, I played a6, you played e4, c5, and the Reynolds attack here, we have the move d5. Okay. So again, queen to c7. Controlling e5 is essential in the beginning. Here he took right away and went back, and so we've achieved this position yet again. And we looked at the move queen to e2, which is actually very dangerous. With the queen on e2, looking at the c-pawn, which doesn't look like anything, actually can lead to some sacrifices that black should at least be a little bit prepared for. But now we're going to focus on the move knight to d4. And this originally was the main line in this system. It's sort of fallen, out of popularity, but a move that you really must know if you're going to play like this. How natural is that? You move to the center. And you attacked my pawn, so again, we're going to defend it. That's why we played the move c4, so we can play knight to c5. And now if, again, you play queen to e2, you can lead right back into this position where you can take on b5 or you can go to f5. So white still has the chance to transpose back into that last game. But here he played an independent try. He's, okay, bishop e3. A sensible developing move. And in a lot of lines, imagine this knight remaneuvers itself. Maybe I'm thinking of trading for your guy and then winning your e6 pawn. So that's actually a theme that might occur in this type of position. And here Garry played e5. A tempting move, but not a very good one, is castling queenside. It looks good. There's a pin on the d file, and now you're going to play e5. However, after queen e2, we're again thinking about some sacrifices on b5. And this can get kind of scary. For example, e5, I take. So I got 2 pawns, and okay, you can defend your c-pawn, but I mean, it looks kind of scary. White is really opening you up a lot faster, and you have no attack going on. So this could be pretty dangerous for black. So castling is, in a lot of these lines you do castle, but especially when the knight's over here on g5, because there's less sacking on b5 going on. But instead he played e5 here, and he went knight to f3. He's going to remaneuver to g5, where he's going to be, looking at this square. Maybe I can trade for your knight, and then I can drop my knight into e6. Again, obviously tempting is knight to f5. But if you play here, we can sort of play around the knight. You can imagine a position like this. Queen f3. The queen, in most of these lines where the queen comes out to f3, she's going to h3. So a position like this could occur, and you could either play knight to d4 or queen to d7, and you'll just kind of have to play around this knight. He's not doing so much, and you're going to probably castle on the queen side if allowed. So okay, if that's what white wants to do, it's not actually that big of a nuisance as it might seem at first. You can sort of play around that guy, which is why instead he decided to go to f3. Again, he's going to g5. Bishop e2, a sensible developing move. Knight g5. And now black played a very good move. So one of white's ideas is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to be able to plant my knight on e6. And Garry just castled, which is an exchange sacrifice. Because white took the knight and played knight e6. And after queen b6, he won an exchange. And this actually should actually be really good for black. Again, when you have an unopposed dark squared bishop, this usually ends up being very strong for black. That's the kind of imbalance that actually can favor you as black. There's a lot of pressure now on f2. My bishop, queen, rook, my knight maybe can sometimes jump into g4. I have lots of pressure on f2. So I definitely have enough compensation here for the exchange. And let's see how the game continued. In the game, knight to d5 was played. We'll come back to this. Queen e2 is the more popular move. And among other moves, let's just give you a sample continuation. We can start pushing on that side. In here, that's also a nice move. You can interpose this. And in this, there's actually, in this particular line, there's lots of drawing methods. I'm just going to demonstrate one. Here's the most common way to draw. But there's a lot of lines that are just known to be forced draws in this particular variation with queen e2 here. We won't go too much into it. But in the game, we're just going to focus on what was played. Knight to d5, which is actually a mistake. And I do want to give the audience here a good chance to see if you can play like Garry. I think this is a very tall order in this case. Try to think of a couple move sequence here. There's some tactics in this position, and we'll see if you guys can find them. Again, you can pause at home. All right, Steven, it looks like you have an idea in your head.
Yeah, it's just not all the way thought through and calculated, but I believe you take the bishop on you take the rook, the knight on d5 with the bishop.
Okay. All right, parting with a very nice bishop. What's the idea?
Stopping the attack on the queen. So
stopping the attack on the queen, yeah.
Stay on d6, but
yeah. Have you figured it out?
Well, I want to play knight g4 next and continue.
Okay, so you want to play knight g4, which looks like it hangs a knight.
Oh, excuse me.
But oh, there's more.
Yeah, I believe you can still take on f2 to check here.
Okay, you want to take this way? Oops. You did gift me a knight there. That was rather generous.
Yeah,
Probably a big mistake. We're getting close, though. No, we're on sort of the right track. And if you came up with this at home, congratulations, you found the second best move. But let's look at one idea here. An example would be, this is sort of a move we're trying to make. We're trying to make bishop takes f2. You're on the right track. We're trying to make this work. And if here now, we can play this move that you were thinking of, with the idea that if they take, well, now knight to g4, and this just totally wins, because I'm going to take your rook, and if you take here, you might get checkmated. Let's go all the way to checkmate. So that's sort of in the position, but let's actually do this run through this one more time. After here, I don't have to take your bishop. If I understand the tactics here, I can just play like queen to f3. And maybe my next move, I'm just going to bring all my pieces in. So you obviously can just save this guy wherever you want to go. And this actually should be fine. So after knight to d5, we're really close to the idea now. We're really close. So see if we can put it all together and come up with a combination.
It's not knight d4 though, right? Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, it looks like maybe you've come up with it, Dennis.
Yeah, it might be bishop takes e4.
Bishop takes d5, yeah.
Bishop takes d5 instead of hanging the knight. Just direct check on it.
Yeah, now you're talking. Right. And in the game, he had to move over. So again, if here we have the same situation where knight to g4, very powerful and strong, the rook is pinned and we're going to win some material. All right. So in the game, seeing this, he played king to h1. And now he has a simple but very strong plan. e4. The next move, e3. e3. He's getting his passer a little bit closer, whereas white didn't push his passer. Now, so white now wants to push his guy, so he blockaded. And after a4, black played a very strong move, showing an understanding of the position. What white might want to do, instead of playing a4, is to bring his bishop to the e6 square. That'd be a really good square for that bishop. So Garry played g6. He's not going to let that happen. And this position is not good at all, but he played after taking g3, which is a very bad move. And Garry was quick to punish him. Because now, after knight to h5, everything is going to sacrifice itself on g3. So he played queen to g4. Okay, that protects g3 a little bit. But now there is a sacrifice on g3 that works. Which
bishop takes.
Bishop takes, excellent, yeah. So if you don't take, then I robbed you of a pawn. So he took. And now knight takes check. And in the game, he went to g2. King g1 is probably the lesser evil. But now after e2, this is, unpleasant. If you just go here, this is actually quite strong for black. You're not going to like what's going to come next. But what you can do is you can get rid of these guys. We can trade a little bit, and then I get to take here. It made a queen. You could also make a rook. I don't know whichever you like. You get some position like this that, okay, should be really good, and it's winning for black. Okay, so you probably saw that, and you said, okay, I'll go here instead. Now the game is very close to over. This lets the rook into f2. And my knight's attacked. He just moved his knight. Also, now we have some threats going on right here. So white stopped that. And obviously, you can take the bishop on c2. But, chess artist that he is, he played the very cool move, h5. There's just not a whole lot of options for that queen. She's not really going very far. So it had to take on g6 and bring a rook to the g file. And all right, and then white resigned here. And again, it's a technical task for these guys to win this position, but stuff's going on right here that you might not like. So yeah, let's see if we have time for the next. I don't know where my phone went. And now we're going to look at the main line, and we're going to follow the game. Predrag Nikolic versus Alexey Shirov from Horkin, 1994. Okay. And we had a big discussion of where the city actually is, and still nobody knows. Comment below, where's the city? Use Google. We never thought of using Google. Okay, so here we are. We're going to get to our main line. e4, d5, Reynolds attack. Okay, so they delayed taking on e6 for just a moment. And we come now to our main course. In this position, knight to g5. So this will conclude it for the Meran after this game. I think we're going to move on some anti-Merans in part 4. But this is it. When you play the Meran, this is the main line. Knight to g5. Okay, you attacked my pawn, so I protect it. And there's actually two moves, really. e5 is the most trodden path, and this is probably still the main line. Sacrificing a pawn so that you can play rook e1 and stuff can happen here. Very interesting, though, is this move queen f3. I think it's a very interesting idea. And the idea is to put more pressure on the e6 pawn by playing queen h3. And the main move is bishop d6. I'm going to come right back. I don't think this is particularly the strongest move. This hasn't been played very often. This is kind of an interesting idea that doesn't get played as much as it possibly could. So here's sort of the main line, and well, this should be good. I mean, optically it looks pretty good for white because he's, you know, breaking through a little bit on the queen side. This should be decent for black. However, I want to show, oh sorry, we'll go back to this. After queen to f3, I want to show this move h6. And there's a little game here that I want to show. The game Gross Lane 2008. This was a correspondence game. And 2008, so they were probably using computers. And every move here, computer perfect. And the result was black wins. So these correspondence games can actually show you quite a lot, because here they are running their engines for hours and hours and hours, and it spits out whatever. And so you'd expect most games to be a draw. But I quite like this move, h6. And if white continues with his main idea, you're going to like this game. It's a little less human than the other ones, but it's very pleasing. So castles. Rook e1. Now I'm going to play e5, but I'm not going to sack a pawn. And get ready. Took the knight. So he's sacrificing in exchange. He's opening up some files. After the queen takes. Okay, you got that, but you know, you're a little trapped down there. You're not necessarily as cozy as you would like to be. And now b4. Okay. e5. Now this is hanging, this is hanging. And he ignores everything. Now everything's hanging. Let's keep track of how many things are hanging in this game, just out of interest here. Okay, the queen went back. He attacks the queen, so still all the knights are getting attacked. Queen goes over. Now you might think I'm going to move my knight, or I'm going to take your knight. No, I'm going to play this typical motif now. Okay, so what am I going to move my stuff? Am I going to take your knight? No. I'm going to attack your queen. I'm going to attack your queen. So yeah, everything, all queens are hanging and knights are still hanging. The rook is hanging, which is, it's fun to use some pretty colors here. So everything's hanging, which is why I said this is not necessarily the most human game. After here, you attack my rook. All right, fine, I'll take your knight. Now you might expect me to take the rook or take the pawn back. I'll take the pawn. Now you might think I'm going to move my rook. No. I'm going to attack f2. And we got this position. And somewhere around here, the computer starts to say, yeah, things are looking favorable for black. Because here he has to sack and exchange. And he comes back over here, wins this. And now again, this is sort of a technically winning endgame. So here it was, you know, computer, super, tactical melee. But again, it's resulted in a position where white, I assume his engine just told him, hey, you're losing because that king is so active. But the material is the same. It's just the activity of the king. So, okay, that game was fantastic, so I thought I would have to show you guys. And we'll come back to our main featured game here yet again. So we got Shirov here with the black pieces. And his opponent played e5. So again, this is the most popular move, so you can expect to see this the most. And there's nothing better than to take it. Rook e1. So yeah, it looks a little bit scary for black because you still have to prove that you can castle. So black went to d6. And there's probably nothing better than trading queens here. For example, if you play queen to e2. I think I can just go here. And if you want to trade stuff, this is actually totally fine for black now. So it's not too scary. So instead, after queen d6, we got the trade of queens. And bishop e3. So again, we have the idea that I might take your knight and then take on e6. And he castled. Now, before just grabbing this guy and then chomping on e6. He got this free developing move in. All right, now he took it. And he took here. And all of this had been played before, so probably both these players knew this. They're both pretty good at knowing some theory. And okay, a move you can consider is taking the bishop, so that's a very respectable move. But white tried, this is actually white played the main move, which might be a surprise if you're new to this type of position. And still, this is all theory. We're on move 21. This is still all theory. Several games, and like hundreds of games in this position still. White has an idea of dislodging this knight. This knight is really preventing white from doing what he might want to do. He wants to infiltrate on the 7th rank. So he's got to go get rid of this guy. And so in the game, he played h3. The idea is g4, g5. And now, black showed a very deep understanding of the position, but again, it's still all theory. Sometimes, if this knight isn't here, so let's just go do some nonsense. And that's not nonsense enough. I don't know where I can put it to make my point work. But sometimes, let's say we dislodge this knight. We're thinking of taking on g7, and then coming down here, attacking the king, attacking the bishop. So he played rook a to b8. So he's already defending against these tactical ideas. And after g4, also the rook's going to b8 because you're going to play over here on this side of the board. He went here. Still all theory. I'm not actually sure where they deviated. Somewhere around here they start to deviate. So let's go ahead and just sort of enjoy this game. On the bishop. Bishop retreated. And here, I think here too, you can actually take here for rook e7. But this is what happened. All right, h6. What's going on here? Aha. And yeah, so you can see how just complicated these positions really can get. I know we're kind of rushing, but we don't have that much time. Okay. Knight b4, very good move. Let me grab this one. Knight to c6. So white has very active pieces, and he's, the king is a little bit boxed in, but we do have this big passer here, so, but I believe this is the start of his downfall. So now we go here. He plays here. c2, getting close. Now here I think white thought he had a little trick. And he played rook f4. So white thinks he has this little trick. But again, I'll let you guys figure this out. This will be the last. This will have to be the last one. A very tricky move. A very, very tricky move. And there's small threat. Yes, right. So that's sort of his idea. Yeah, check. Check is the idea. Yeah, and if the bishop takes, yeah, there's some back rank stuff. So he took here. And, okay, maybe white already thought he was lost, or maybe he was banking it all on this move. And now your choices are limited. You can get mated in one, or block with your rook. So he blocked with his rook. And there's lots of ways to capture. He went here, and we're going to see in this position. So he's going to check, and then the king's going to be forced up, and so both sides are queening. He went back to block that check, attacks the knight. queens. Now he takes and gets to check. And white makes a queen. But just simply after taking here, white resigned. And so again, a tactical sequence followed by another technically winning endgame. Now, if we had time, we could play this out, but suffice to say, it actually is a clear win for black in this position. You can mess around with it if you want on your own. But that'll have to do it for the Meran, so that'll conclude it for that. Next week we will do the anti-Merans, which are some very interesting ways that if white thinks he's going to avoid some of these lines, we saw how complicated and sharp they can be. We'll see what happens if he's not willing to go into these lines, but he still wants to play the E3 variation that we have seen. So again, as always, go ahead, hit like, share, subscribe, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight.